Talking about Dominique Strauss Kahn, he is in a Manhattan courtroom at the moment. His lawyers are asking for his bail conditions to be relaxed. As soon as we find out what the judge says about those recommendations, we'll let you know, of course. In the meantime, we're talking about the numerous issues that are being raised by the developments in the story today. Let's pull up a comment from Bob in Queensland, who's got in touch through Facebook. He says, anonymity for the accused sounds logical. However, there are practical issues, especially for celebrities. Even with the news blackout, how could Strauss Kahn explain to the world why he's stuck in New York City with a transmitter on his ankle? Well, let's put that point to Gilles Klein, who's still with us. We haven't been able to reconnect with Vivian, which is a shame, and we still have Rachel, who's with us in London. To those two, I'll bring in Ali Ezzatyar, an American lawyer based in Paris. Maybe, Ali, you could lead us off. Do you think the experience of Dominique Strauss Kahn makes the case that those accused of rape or attempted rape should be allowed to remain anonymous?
I think it's difficult. I think in a case like this, that's a good point that was made earlier, that, you know, whether or not he was in France or whether or not he was in New York, the fact that he's Dominique Strauss Kahn makes it difficult for him to stay anonymous. And I think Americans tend to take pride in the fact that no matter who an accused is, whether or not he is, you know, famous or not famous, that he ultimately is subject to public scrutiny like anyone else. I think this doesn't change anything per se. No celebrity is, in a sense, above the law. I think it's a cultural factor for Americans more than anything else. It's very difficult to say if anything would have happened differently in France. There are definitely different issues that arise early on in a proceeding. There's no guilty or not guilty pleading. Prosecutors have a lot more leeway in terms of evidence in France, and anonymity is also much more sort of an issue for those who are accused. But in the past, there have been French celebrities and French politicians that have been brought up on charges of corruption, and it's leaked immediately. So it's very difficult to say whether or not you know, that would be any different in France or in New York.
Rachel, come in here.
Well, I think what I find interesting here is that my first thought is that a lot of the time allowing the accuser to be anonymous but not allowing the accused to be anonymous actually ends up acting in favour of the accuser. I can think particularly in an Australian context, we've had a lot of accusations against professional footballers for committing sexual assault against women. And what that has tended to mean is that because the public is familiar with the footballer, they see him as being a human being and they see him as somebody who's being unfairly targeted, whereas the woman remains a kind of anonymous harlot who's out to get him. So I think that perhaps keeping high-profile potential offenders anonymous would actually enable both sides to be better heard.
Gilles, where do you stand on this?
Oh, you know, in France right now, after this morning news coming from New York, the French people generally online, on Twitter, on the web and on the TV show say we have the best system in the world, you know. So they don't speak about the anonymous lady, they just say it's better because we don't have a perp walk and we are not too fast to put the people in jail and so on, you know. And the second issue is there will be a different country before the DSK affair in New York and after, whatever the court says, because the feminist people and all the newspaper, all the media, all the people in the street has been speaking about that. So the main issue will be more that it's a 68, you know, a mai 68 of the ladies. You can't talk now, you can act easily when you are in the power area to a lady like you have done it before, you know. You can't joke the same way. You know, there is a DSK between and after.
And if you're watching, I'm curious to know, do you think that what's playing out in the Dominique Strauss Kahn case makes a case for anonymity, not just for a woman making accusations of sexual assault, but also the man that she is accusing? Do call us up, country code 44 2070 83 72 72. Calls coming in from Spain, Vietnam, Pakistan, Canada, Finland, Israel, Sweden and the Philippines. Another way you can get onto the show is if you post on Facebook. One of the team will get back to you, will get your number and get you on the phone. That's what we've done with Don. He's a New Yorker on Prince Edward Island in Canada. Don, thanks for getting in touch. What's your response to what's happening?
Well, I don't believe that it's possible for a very famous public person to remain anonymous. in something like this. However, in this particular case, I've never seen anything like it in New York ever. I mean, this man would be the equivalent of like Mitt Romney in London, suddenly being hauled before a judge and accused with very little evidence. And then, in fact, the district attorney at the time, Cyrus Vance, he was emphatic about the strength of the case and the account of the victim, and he went on record. Well, he gave a news conference.
Don, let me just interrupt you here. There's a couple of things worth picking up on. In terms of the strength of the evidence, clearly no one's really in a position to judge because we haven't seen it, but the prosecution did say they had strong evidence to back up their claims. But let's put your concerns to our three guests, to Gilles, to Ali and to Rachel. Ali, maybe you could go first. Do you have worries that Dominique Strauss Kahn was judged in the court of public opinion and that those accusations will stick to him whether he's charged, whether he's found guilty or not guilty?
It's too early to say, obviously, but I think let's realize one thing. The press has had months now to dig up evidence on the individual, the accuser, and they have essentially failed. If you were reading the New York Times and reading any sort of biographies that existed on her before, they were basically glowing. And it was the prosecution itself that uncovered most of the details that could eventually, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, but that could lead to, dismissal of charges. So you have to take the system in its totality. The American system prides itself, of course, on the openness and also the fact that the prosecution has not only, the responsibility of putting someone behind bars, but also uncovering the evidence, whatever it may be. The downsides to it may be in a case like this where you have, an individual like Dominique Strauss Kahn who does the quote-unquote perp walk, and that's something that's seen by the public, but by no means is that a means by which to judge a legal system. I think that would be foolhardy, essentially, to go that far.
As you're talking, Ali, we can see older pictures of Dominique Strauss Kahn in his previous job as head of the IMF. Before that, we saw live pictures, not much happening outside that courtroom in Manhattan, and as soon as something is happening, of course, we'll bring that to you here on BBC World News. But Gilles, I could see you, the viewers couldn't. I could see you nodding your head as Ali was speaking. What's your view of how Dominique Strauss Kahn's been dealt with by the media?
Oh no, I don't feel it. Regarding the French public opinion, he would be a martyr. He comes from the martyrdom, so they will forgive everything he had. But personally, yes, it's a big miss for him because he left in a hazardous condition the IMF, and also he's not running for the presidential right now. But his personality, his reputation, is going up today.
So that's interesting. You say there are short-term things which can't be changed, where he is definitely lost out, but in the long term, his reputation may be okay if, and of course it's if, he is found not guilty. And it is worth reiterating that despite these reports in the New York Times saying the prosecution has doubts about the reliability of the key witness in this case, Dominique Strauss Kahn remains charged with 7 different offences. Rachel, what's your view of the media coverage? Should Dominique Strauss Kahn have been given more even-handed treatment?
Well, I think the thing that's striking me at the moment is something that I just saw up on Twitter before, where somebody was saying that it's absolutely true that if Dominique Strauss Kahn turns out to not be guilty of these charges, and that's an absolutely terrible thing, the way in which that may have impacted his career. But it's also important to balance this out by remembering that in the vast majority of cases where people accuse others of sexual assault, they're not making it up.
Rachel, thanks for those comments for the moment. OK, let's cross to Bush House, the home of the BBC World Service, where Mahfouz is with the World Have Your Say team, who are busy answering all of your calls. Mahfouz, what have you got for us?
Just in the last few minutes, there have been calls from Spain, Vietnam, Finland, Ghana. Quite a few of you are saying that you think Mr. Strauss Kahn is actually innocent. Some of you are saying that this entire episode was political. Edward in St. Petersburg, Russia, called in. He says, I felt from the very start that he was innocent. He held his head up in court. There's another view, though. Vaglog got in touch on Twitter. In sexual assault cases, the identity of the accused should also be withheld. A false accusation can ruin a person's life. And as always, you can join the conversation right now using the hashtag that you see on the screen, WHYS.
Thank you very much indeed, Mahfouz. I'm curious that some of you are saying he's innocent or guilty. I'm confused as to how you could possibly know that, but thank you very much indeed for calling us up. Let's go back to Ali, do you feel uncomfortable, Ali, that in France there's clearly a lot of political discussions going on about what role Dominique Strauss Kahn should play in the presidency and the presidential election next year? Is it far too early for that?
I think clearly it's far too early. I think taking a step back, the manner in which this is being viewed by the French press is very interesting. I agree with Gilles that in a sense it looks like he's being cleansed of his sins already, and if he were to have charges dismissed based on the veracity of the prosecution's witness, that wouldn't necessarily change the fact that an individual with the history of Dominique Strauss Kahn doesn't make a great politician. There are individuals who have come up in France in the meantime that he's been in jail, accusing him of essentially attempted sexual assault. So I think it's a huge issue. You know, in the U.S. system, it's generally, yes?
I was just going to jump in to mention, because it's worth mentioning just before we wrap up this half hour of World Have Your Say, there's a poll running on the Figaro newspaper's website saying that